Well, this is awkward.
Halt, Zagreus. Not one step further.
Come on, Meg. Haven't we had more than enough of each other by now? Besides, don't you have someplace else to be?
Your father sent me. All in all, I'd rather be on your bad side than his. Now you can turn back, like a good little man, or I can send you home the painful way. What'll it be?
I'll have to go with the painful way.
A man after my own heart.
Hello there, and welcome to PlayStation Pals, a video game podcast. This week is the actual episode 27, not last week. I was testing you.
Idiot.
So if you were like, hey, it's episode 26, you passed. Congrats. There are no prizes, but but this is the actual 27, and I am your host, Nick, and I'm joined by the Zagreus to my Hades, Jon. Jon, how you feeling?
I'm good, man. No, it's good to be recording face to face again after a couple weeks off. I would like to say it's nice to see you, but I see you quite a bit besides recording, so I can't go that far. But yeah, man, no, doing good. Fresh off of some interesting stuff to talk about. Got a pretty packed show today, so yeah, man, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Sure. And before we get into it, there are two things I wanted to bring up. First thing is Spider-Man 2 gets confirmed for a fall release. This was announced via the PlayStation blog. No specifics yet, but anywhere from, I don't know, September to December, we're going to get Spider-Man 2, which is exciting. I mean, we knew it was 2023 anyway, but...
Yeah, I'd say this falls in the category of very exciting and not exciting at all kind of news, where it's like, of course it's fall 2023. The first Spider-Man came out in September, and a lot of studios like to kind of hit those same windows if they can, and just with the timing and everything, yeah, we kind of thought it would land there, but to get confirmation and an official word from Sony is always nice, especially since this whole rumor or whatever kind of started off with one of those, typical LinkedIn posts from a developer saying that, the thing is coming out in fall. And so is that true? Is that not true? It's nice to get confirmation, but yeah, we'll be, I know my son's excited. This fall is going to be all Spider-Man 2. Are we talking about our wrap-ups today?
No.
Okay, well, just a spoiler, a little teaser for my wrap-up. Last year, Spider-Man Remastered was number 1 with 220 hours. This year, Spider-Man still in the top 3, 100-some hours, thanks to my 5-year-old son. So,
yeah, I think people were getting worried because, Sony has been silent. Like, we expected a showcase already, but never got it. And, of course, as we've mentioned on this show, like, the slate of games for next year outside of PSVR 2 is, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's
especially first party.
Yeah, it's like not just Sony. It's kind of across the industry. Obviously, with Xbox being a no-show at the Game Awards, it's like there's not a lot of non-third-party news out there. But I think it's also in the same vein pretty exciting because I have faith that Sony's going to have a good release schedule. They're very, very judicious when it comes to getting their games out in a timely, good cadence. Mm-hmm. So if anything, to me, it's just like, yeah, I think we're going to get a couple surprises still. But, to know that there's at least that one huge banger, it really doesn't get much bigger than Spider-Man 2. That's in that God of War, Ragnarok, Last of Us 2 range. And I would imagine this is probably going to... I would imagine this game will surpass Ragnarok as the... Well, actually, I'm going to take that back because this is going to probably be PS5 only, so it probably won't bypass the sales of Ragnarok, but it's going to sell like hotcakes. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait.
Yeah, and there was no new information other than this fall window. There was no new trailer. We don't know anything more about the game.
That's the info I want. I want to know, I know you're very confident this thing's going to be co-op and that you can even play as maybe even more than just Miles and Peter, but I still want that confirmation. I'm not so sure it's confirmed, but I'd say it's very likely, but that's the confirmation that I want.
Yeah, of course. And then, as you mentioned, PlayStation 2022 wrap-up is live. This was announced via the PlayStation blog. You can go and see how many hours you spend gaming, what's your top game, how many trophies you earned, a lot of fun little stats that when they're laid out in front of you that you've played over 600 hours of video games, you'll be a little taken aback.
Rookie numbers, Nick.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And if you're listening, I would love to see some of your stats. Like I would love to see the card that they provide and how many hours people have put into certain games.
That's a good idea, Nick. Yeah, please, Mark, I know hopefully you're still listening. Any of my buddies out there, just send us a snapshot if you can to the email address, PlayStationPalsPod@gmail.com. And and we can either discuss, just to let us know what you guys are playing. It's always fun to know what the community's doing. So
because on episode 29 in our Game of the Year wrap up, or just game everything wrap up, 2022 wrap up, we will be talking about ours, and we would love to read yours out loud on the show. So for episode 29, if you want your stats to be out there, send them in. We'll happily read them. We'll
happily judge your 5 games and judge you as a person. Happily do that.
And learn more about our audience is always cool. So.
And full warning, spoilers again. My list will be much more embarrassing than yours, so don't feel too bad. Also, I have one thing before we can go on, Nick.
Oh no.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, you're not going to get away from this. I need to know, Nick, what is the best show of 2022? I know this isn't PlayStation related, but you cannot escape this. At work, we had the entire team say what their favorite show of the year was, and Nick won't do it because my favorite show is Better Call Saul. Another guy on our team, his favorite show is Andor. I don't think Nick can decide, but he's about to right now, or this podcast is ending right now.
Oh, John!
Our friendship will be stronger than ever. I want to know. I just have to know. You can't. He put the news down just so you guys know. That's what he.
No, someone wrote that for me.
Okay, all right.
I mean, here's the deal. I like to be surprised. I like when and same with video games. I like to be surprised having those Control games come out. Jedi Fallen Order. Those games that you're not Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy last year. Those games come out and just be like, oh, wow, this is actually really cool. And tease a game we'll be talking about next week. Neon White was definitely going to be one of those. So Better Call Saul was the known quantity. We knew Vince Gilligan was going to nail the ending, and he did. That show was incredible overall. But Andor is a happy surprise. So it is Andor is my TV show of the year.
Very good. Okay.
All right.
We can move on now. I had to do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, so now we can move into the format of the show. This is how it works. We each bring 3 things to talk about. It can be a video game we're playing. It can be a news item, a topic, an email to PlayStationPalsPod@gmail.com, or a Twitter DM @PSPalsPod. Any of those things, we bring it, we talk about it, and that's it. So to start things off, John.
Yes.
It's that time of year again, or month.
I know. I feel like I use that same exact joke every time. It's not even a joke. It's just a statement. But it's another one of these. Now that we get 2 of these every single month, it's a pretty popular news item. But we did get the PlayStation Extra and PlayStation Premium games for the month of December. So again, this is the 2nd and 3rd tier, not for the people who are just those standard subscribers. So just going to go over everything and then get our thoughts, and we will move on. But the game that they decided to put front and center, not very exciting in my world, but if you're into these games, it might be for you. But we got WWE 2K22 coming, and that is from developer Visual Concepts. And this was a game that was released this past March. So, the newest version of these games, and it did receive a 77 OpenCritic score, which might not sound, like it's going to blow your hair back, but an important thing to note with this game is they actually skipped the 2K21 version because 2K20 was so bad. It actually got a 40 on Metacritic. It was just broken. I don't know if you remember when that game came out. There was a lot of GIFs and bullshit, really funny, buggy, glitchy messes that were on the internet. But
wow.
So it seems like they, righted the ship, returned to form. So if you're into the wrestling games, that is one for you. Weird asterisk though with the game is that this one will not be available until January 3rd for whatever reason. So you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for that one. And then seemingly kind of going with it seems like this is kind of Sony's strategy, at least thus far with the extra tier, is they like to throw large franchises into it. So it seems like we're getting the Far Cry franchise, or at least a good portion of it, into the tiers this week or this month, starting with Far Cry 5, March 2018 game from Ubisoft Montreal. Received an 82 Metacritic. If you've played Far Cry, you know what you're getting into. This wasn't really my favorite one. I think the thing that people always kind of like determines if they like it or not is the setting. I just wasn't really into the American setting all that much, but still available for you if you would like. And then we have a pair of Far Cry spin-offs. Usually when they release a mainline Far Cry game, they follow it up with like a smaller $40 title. So we got Far Cry Primal, which was February 2016, Metacritic score of 77, and Far Cry New Dawn, February 2019. Again, both of these from Ubisoft Montreal, and that one got a 73 Metacritic score. So I wouldn't read too much into the scores, though. Again, if you find these games fun, if you want to just kind of have a mindless open world romp, great games for you. And then we also are getting Souls-like Mortal Shell, which is from developer Cold Symmetry. Came out in August 2020. I never played this game. I'm a big Souls fan, but I've heard this is amongst the top tier Souls clones out there. There's a lot of those Lords of the Fallen, Life's a Pi, that Pinocchio game that's coming out. A lot of knockoffs out there, but I've heard this one's actually pretty good. So Mortal Shell, 76 Metacritic score from Cold Symmetry. And then we got some actually pretty big games coming out. They're all a little bit older, so I'm not personally that stoked about them, but they are objectively good games. So we're getting Judgment, which is the Ryu Ga Gotoku game from Sega, developers of the Yakuza franchise. This was more their detective, realistic, I think, style game. It's very much like Yakuza. You're going around, a small intimate map with lots of density there, but you're kind of more, I think it's a little more serious, a lot less zany and crazy like Yakuza can get. That game received an 83, so that one was pretty well received, and there's a sequel out there for those who might want to get more of that world if they do dig it. And then additionally, we did already get this game on PlayStation Essential, so it's probably going to be a lot of people, or I don't imagine we'll get much out of this one, but it's there. Yakuza Like a Dragon. Nick played it. Nick beat it. He enjoyed it. So if you're into the Yakuza series, definitely check it out. And it's also kind of to note that this is the direction of the series moving forward. I believe they're even changing the name of Yakuza to just Like a Dragon. So, this is kind of maybe like the jumping point for the series going forward, besides the weird spin-offs like they're doing with Like a Dragon Ishin, that medieval Japanese game, or Japan game that's coming out from them. But we're additionally getting Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, again from Ryu Ga Gotoku. Came out April 2018. This got an 85 on Metacritic. Yakuza is a series of high quality. They don't miss. Again, you know what you're getting. And then we got some older games, but very big franchise that these come from. We got the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War from Monolith Productions. Came out in September 2014 and October 2017, respectively. 85 and 82 Metacritic scores. So, it's if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like open world games, you have no reason not to play this game. And it also includes one of the coolest systems I think that was introduced in that entire generation, which is the Nemesis system, which shockingly hasn't been really replicated from other people, where you have these enemies in the game that kind of remember you, that remember if you killed them, if they killed you, and they kind of taunt you, and it just makes a little extra layer to it. And then I'm just going to rattle some off, Nick. There's a couple more games, but we don't want to spend too much time with these. The Pedestrian from Skookum Arts came out in January 2020. It's a puzzle game with a really cool aesthetic. Check it out if you're into puzzle stuff. Evil Genius 2 from Rebellion Games. This is an RTS sim game. Came out March 2021. It was a Game Awards nominee for Best Sim Game. So if you're into those, something to look at. Pillars of Eternity 2. This is the highest rated game of the whole bunch. It's a if you're familiar with Divinity Original Sin or those CRPG kind of games, it's going to be that high customizable experience, lots and lots of choice, lots and lots to explore and do. But it is a computer role-playing game, so kind of know that going in. And then lastly, Adventure Time: Pirates of Enchiridion. I don't really know how to say that. Ben 10 Power Trip, Worms, WMD, and The Escapist 2. Just some smaller indie games. Not going to really jump into those too in depth because they're honestly probably not for this audience. And then lastly here, Nick, we did get a 4 PlayStation Premium games. We got Ridge Racer 2 coming from PSP, Heavenly Sword coming from PS3, Oddworld Abe's Exodus from PS3, and Pinball Heroes. I didn't even bother to write the system down because who wants to play Pinball Heroes? PSP, thank you. So yeah, Nick, what are your thoughts after this list? What do you think?
Did you play Heavenly Sword?
I did. I didn't beat it, and I didn't. I think it was probably at the tail end of the rental days. Okay. Where I might have just. I actually. The PS3 was like really the first huge purchase I ever bought with my own money. So I got it at the very end of 2007. And so I don't know if Blockbusters were around there, but I think I blew all my cash to get the system. So I just went like, I can't buy another game, but I ran to Blockbuster and begged my parents. So. But yeah, I think I played a little bit of it.
Okay. There's nothing memorable really about it other than Andy Serkis plays the villain in that game.
Nice.
And yeah, it's...
The thing I've heard about Heavenly Sword is it was just kind of... It just didn't come out at the right time. It was kind of in between... when like it was trying to be like God of War, right? That's kind of like the type of game it is, and it just didn't really move the needle far enough. If it had waited until like the PS4 was really hot and heavy, I think it probably would have been another potential franchise for Sony. But I've heard it's good. I just... At this point, are you really want to go back and play that?
No, it was not. Like, again, this was like early PS3. I mean, we're talking...
It was like 2006 or 2007.
I don't even know if the store was live when this when this game came out. And definitely trophies weren't a thing.
2007.
So, yeah, so... I was just curious if you had played that one, because that was a quote-unquote Sony exclusive at the time.
It really is just female Kratos. It's like when you kind of look at her. Big stoic expression on her face. Doesn't have time for anybody's shit.
But other than that, obviously my thoughts on Yakuza Like a Dragon are out there.
Yep.
So I ended up beating it and loving the game earlier this year. And then the other one I wanted to highlight is those Middle-earth games, Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor. Just... great games. They took the Batman Arkham Asylum systems, the free flow combat, the stealth mechanics, and put it into Lord of the Rings, and it works really well. Mm-hmm. They're really fun games to play. Shadow of War, the sequel, was kind of plagued with live service aspects to it. It had a store, and that ruined the game a lot.
I heard the end game was fucked. Because of it.
Yep. So that game definitely. It's gone now. I'm curious as to what the experience would be like playing it, but all the mechanics are still there, and it's still a great game. So those are my highlights out of these.
Sure. No, that's good, and not really a lot for me. I like Far Cry, but I have Far Cry 6 if I'm going to play any of them, and so yes, honestly, I kind of appreciate it because I have plenty of games to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there you go, guys. Make sure you add them. Well, actually, you don't add these ones; they just stay in the service. But make sure you check them out.
Yep, it's a slow month, so
yeah,
definitely check them out. All right, so moving on, we kind of teased about this last week, as on December 8th, the same day as the Game Awards, the FTC ended up suing Microsoft over its Activision Blizzard purchase, effectively stopping it. And as we mentioned on the show before, Microsoft is trying to buy Activision Blizzard for close to $70 billion, trying to shore up their Game Pass with the Overwatches and Diablo 4s and Call of Duties. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, Sony doesn't like this at one bit.
No. Why would they?
Because they make a lot of money off all those games. But this has been an interesting development that this has happened because a lot of people said it wasn't going to happen, that this was just going to go through, and by January, Activision Blizzard will be a Microsoft owned publisher. But here they are, they blocked them, and for a very interesting reason. And I'm going to read right from their complaint here. It goes, Microsoft's past conduct provides a preview of the combined firm's likely plans if it consummates the proposed acquisition, despite any assurances the company may offer regarding its plans. In March 2021, Microsoft acquired ZeniMax Media, the parent company of the well-known game developer and publisher Bethesda Softworks. Microsoft assured the European Commission during its antitrust review of the ZeniMax purchase that Microsoft would not have the incentive to withhold ZeniMax titles from rival consoles. But shortly after the European Commission cleared the transaction, Microsoft made public its decision to make several of the newly acquired ZeniMax titles, including Starfield, Redfall, and Elder Scrolls 6, Microsoft's exclusives. So, the basis of their argument is, hey, when you guys complete this, you're just going to gobble this up, become a big super publisher, and then you're just going to be like, these games aren't on Sony or Nintendo
what are you gonna
anymore.
Do about
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to play those, you got to get a Microsoft console, and you have to subscribe to Game Pass, and that's just that. Which we all knew, like that's exactly how it was going to play out. You know, there'll be some deals here and there to keep titles for a little longer on other consoles, but they all were going to go to Microsoft.
That's why you do it.
So that's a lot there. John, what do you think?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I first and foremost, I do find it very interesting that, like, it seems like the main complaint has nothing to do with monopolistic tendencies or, you know, becoming too large of a corporation. It's just like, yo, you lied to us in the past. We don't trust you, so we're going to take this to court. Yep. So, you know, it's kind of interesting that that's the main reason. But yeah, it's just, you know, I'm happy that this is getting pushback, not because I want Sony to beat Microsoft or anything like that. I am one of those people that I don't like this future we live in where bigger companies are buying big companies to just be, you know, Disney buying Fox and Microsoft wanting to buy Activision Blizzard. Like, we don't want this to happen, people. And if you're a Microsoft fan out there and you want this to happen, I would really, really think about this situation, because, you know, to put this in maybe some aspects that the layman can understand, and by all means, I am the definition of a layman in this, so, you know, I'm kind of just going off the cuff here, but I did hear an interesting take on this, and it made me think. You know, the reason that Amazon was able to be so successful and get as large as they were is because they were able to withstand losses more than the mom and pop stores would. So let's say down the street you got mom and pop are selling something for $6. Amazon can come in and they can sell it for $5, and they're gonna sell it for $5 at a loss, because what they're trying to do is squeeze out the competition. They can take loss after loss after loss after loss. Meanwhile, mom and pop can't. They gotta shutter their stores. Once they shutter their stores, Amazon goes, okay, cool, now we can bump the price because we got the market share we needed. I kind of view this the exact same way, where it's Microsoft, because they are such a large corporation, because they have so much money, they can take loss after loss after loss from Game Pass, you know, maybe not bringing them in money or whatever the case, where maybe a smaller company, and I know it's funny to call Sony a small company, but in this, when you're comparing these two, they are much smaller. You know, to the point where they're saying, like, okay, we'll just take these losses because if we can get Call of Duty, even if we're going to give it to you for 10 years, that 11th year, we're going to start eating a little away at the market share, and not giving consumers a choice on where they want to play. You know, and it's just, there's never been a precedent for this. There's never been a purchase so large to know how it will truly affect not just video games, but the economy. And that's what these bodies are in their positions for. The FTC doesn't care about video games, it cares about the economy. And if there's these companies that can just come in here and basically fuck with the economics of the situation to their advantage, they're going to call them on it. And so, yeah, listening to Microsoft talk about it, you know, they mentioned that they reached a deal with Nintendo and Steam to bring Call of Duty there for 10 years. And, well, if Nintendo will take it, what the fuck, Sony? And it's like, you know, and it's just smoke and mirrors, I think, because if you think about that statement, well, just the Nintendo Steam thing. The last Call of Duty game on Nintendo was 2013's Ghost. They haven't needed Call of Duty for 10 fucking years. And from what I've heard, it was a financial flop on the Wii U, which is why they stopped selling it. This is just, in my opinion, an attempt from Microsoft PR and Phil Spencer and the like to win the public perception battle, make them seem like they're the good guys. We want everybody to play Call of Duty. It was like, do you think a Switch can run Call of Duty? Look at a screenshot of Fortnite on a Switch versus Fortnite on a PS5 and tell me that you want to play Call of Duty on a Switch. And there might be a Switch 2 in the future. That could be. But it's just these consistent takes from the PR and Phil Spencer that just, they kind of get to me. Like, here's another one. Phil Spencer was on a podcast recently, and he says, from where we sit, it's clear that Sony is spending more time with regulators than they are with us to try and get this deal done. Yeah, of course they are. Why would they want you to get this deal done? It just makes no sense. Like, so it just seems like, oh, well, just trying to take a little shot after a little shot of like, Sony's the bad guy, we're fine. But if you really analyze why they're doing this, is because this has always been Microsoft's MO. Before Xbox was even a thing, Microsoft tried to buy Nintendo. It didn't work. So what did they do? Okay, we'll make our own, and then they stole Halo from Apple. With money, of course, they bought it. They didn't just take it. But they had to purchase this huge IP to make this viable. And then they buy all these other studios. In the future, right? We're going to buy Bethesda because, we need to have more teams. We can't really curate it from inside. Now we're going to buy Activision Blizzard because we have 23 studios. And again, we don't know how to curate them from inside. We released no games this year and we have nothing to announce. And it's just, I'm getting a little sick of it because on the other side, you got Sony who goes, no, we've worked really hard for the past 30 years to build these relationships with these teams, find studios and developers that fit our culture, fit our playstyle, fit our consumers. And we've earned the position that we're in the market. We earned being number one because we make great games, not for any other reason, despite what other people might say. Phil Spencer, I believe it was him. It might have been, I think his name is Brad Smith. He's like the president of Microsoft or something like that. I'm sorry for not having the specifics, but he said something along the lines of, Sony's strategy for growth is to make Xbox smaller. And again, that's just not true. That has no basis of anything. You're just going out here and saying what you want because there's lots of people out there who are not going to fact check anything or look into it that much. But Sony's strategy is not to make Xbox smaller. Sony's strategy is to make great games, make God of War Ragnaroks, and get up on that fucking Game Awards stage and accept awards. And Microsoft doesn't know how to combat that. I rest my case.
Wow. John, you've had some rants on this podcast, but
that was a good one.
Yeah, that was.
Take a drink.
You were full of fire on this, and yeah, I'm with you. I just, we've talked. We really, if this does go through, we don't really care.
Yep.
Because these studios haven't been doing so well anyway. So,
right.
And these franchises are all pretty much on the downturn, but. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just interesting that this is their strategy, is just to take over as much as possible, and put it on Game Pass, and then eventually they're just gonna, just like all these other streaming services, they're gonna jack up the price of Game Pass, and then everyone's not gonna be happy about it.
Yep.
And if you want to play any of these franchises, Call of Duty or anything else, you're gonna have to pay for Game Pass. And yeah, it doesn't look like a great future, and I know Sony's doing the same thing, but
that's an important note. Sony is not a good guy in this situation either. And in fact, this is just my personal belief. I don't think any corporations are good guys. They don't have the best interest for us. They're interested in making money for their shareholders. So, is Sony, being difficult just to be difficult? Sure, they're being, maybe it would be best just to let everybody do everything and we have a laissez-faire market and all that stuff. But I don't like, it almost feels like a schoolyard bully situation where you just have this bigger kid that's just pushing this other kid around because they have more muscles or they're bigger bone structure. But, and I'll just end it with this because I don't want to keep going on, but I heard I like this analogy from another content creator I was listening to. He says, basically Microsoft is, Microsoft wants to hold the gun. They say they're not going to use the gun, but are we sure of that? Are we comfortable to let them hold it? Or, do we say, no, we don't really trust you at the end of this? Because I have heard another argument as well, though, too, that's like, Activision wants to be bought. They've come out and said it. They want to be purchased. Mm-hmm. How many companies can buy them? Microsoft? And I think there's really only one other company that can do it, and that's probably, unfortunately, Tencent, which is, the Chinese company that's an arm of honestly, they're an arm of the government there because that's just how China operates. And so, would I rather see Microsoft purchase them than Tencent? Sure, but I just don't. I want to stop this insanity with purchasing mergers and acquisitions, man. It's just we don't need bigger and bigger corporations.
Sure.
So.
And it is just funny. It's like they're like, oh well, you lied to us about ZeniMax. It's like, this was the plan all along. Like every time they buy, and same thing with Sony. When they bought Insomniac, you knew like there was never going to be an Insomniac game on Xbox going forward, and that's just kind of how it works. But I just love the idea that they're like,
I know.
like I could have called you when it was announced that Bethesda titles were gone. Like that's just it, But
I mean, I know I've heard, with this one, some people say it's a little different just because for 69 and change billions dollars for the economics to work, they really can't get rid of Sony because they've said the most people play on Sony. So like to make it a financially viable purchase, you almost need the players there. But again, it's kind of back to what I said before. Like Microsoft is worth more than $1 trillion. Like they can take hits if they need to.
Right.
Right. But one thing that I heard today too. Sorry, I keep saying one more thing. If this deal does not go through for any reason, Microsoft has to pay Activision $3 billion. There's a $3 billion kill fee in the contract, which, just to put it in perspective, is about the cost of 15 AAA games. So Microsoft wants this deal to go through for many reasons, but that's also just, I'm sure, a part of it. But yeah, so folks, strap in because this is going to be a news story for probably at least throughout all of 2023, I would bet.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot.
I mean, I don't plan on bringing every little hiccup in here, but this was so big, and we couldn't talk about it last week because of the Game Awards, but I definitely wanted to quickly touch on it. But it is definitely something to watch.
The day of the Game Awards, he gets sued.
Yeah, like I said, it was like both black eyes. It was like no games at the Game Awards, and then this happened. Like
no games, no nominees, no anything.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, but
sure.
We can move on.
Sure. All right, guys. We're getting close. Actually, I think we timed this out perfectly so that the final episode of the year should be the championship. But with the PlayStation Pals franchise madness, we got to wrap up the Elite 8, set the final 4 in motion, and then get this thing going. So, for those who have a very good memory, you might remember what games are still to be determined. But, Nick, this week, we got maybe the most important series to PlayStation, especially where they are today. Is Uncharted. That's really the series that kind of ushered in the third-person narrative adventure style game that Sony's renowned for today. And, those are all fantastic games. And they're playing our little cute we just got him for an avatar, man. He's a little Kratos Atreus guy, but cute as hell because he's Astrobot. So we got Uncharted taking on tiny little Astrobot. What are our thoughts? David versus Goliath.
Yeah, it's not fair. That was going to be my first line because Uncharted defined the PS3 for sure with 1 through 3. And then, wrapping up with Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, both excellent games on PS4. And poor Astro is just, for me personally, is just Astro's Playroom, which, again, this is one of our favorite games on PlayStation 5. But I just don't think, unless you are going to fight for Astro, I just do not see it removing Uncharted.
I was getting ready to fight, but when you said that, for you, Astro is only Astro's Playroom, I don't know how I could convince you that that's... Because, I got Astrobot VR, too, and that's probably my favorite game on VR. One of my favorite games, I believe it was 2018, whatever year that came out. Incredible game, and also being on VR, it just provided an experience that I've never had before. And so it really, really sticks to me. I think, we talked about Astro's Playroom, I feel like, on every podcast for the last 4 weeks. But... that's all. It's a perfect game for what it is, but in the spirit of the reason to move on in this, it's Uncharted is just every bit as good as Astrobot, but more important. Maybe not more important going forward. Astrobot could be a very important piece going forward. If they want to stay in the family-friendly space, But I got
a question for you.
Okay.
What would you be more excited about? An Uncharted 5 announcement or a sequel to Astrobot VR?
Astrobot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Solely because it's interesting because like as you know, Nick and I are in our 30s and we've been playing games for a long time, you know, all of our lives, and so I feel like I am reaching a point in my gaming career. Yeah, my career is silly. That the same things are good, but they never get me to the same highs like something like an Undertale or like Astro's VR did. So like I think it's just I would just be a little more excited because that initial experience I had with it was so strong. Where I think of Uncharted, I'm like, yeah, it's all so strong as well, but it's spread out over 85 hours and like, you know, what's it gonna do differently besides it's gonna look gorgeous, of course, but I think just from having a fun with a video game, Astrobot's just pure joy, man. Pure joy.
I definitely agree with you there. Uncharted 4 was just amazing, and I love Lost Legacy a lot. Maybe if it was 1 through 3 versus just Astro, I might be swayed.
Oh man, that's where I'd be more strong with probably Uncharted, I think.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's hard though, because 1 kind of meh, but 2 and 3 are so good.
Yeah. So.
All right.
It's Astro's great, and if we ever have to revisit this, because I'm sure we're getting a Astro sequel very soon to be announced next year for sure. That will maybe change our minds, but for now it is Uncharted.
All right, Nathan Drake reaching the Final Four as you would probably expect. Okay, now we actually have another pretty tough one. Probably we were talking about him earlier on the show, our web-slinging friend, Spider-Man. Can he take down the woman who takes down robot dinosaurs? And Aloy in Horizon. Spider-Man versus Horizon. Thoughts, go.
Gosh, it's not very fair to me.
I know. Spider-Man's so legendary.
Because Insomniac is great. They're just a great developer, and they make great, just pure fun games to play, and they continue to do so. We saw it with both the Spider-Man games. We saw it with Ratchet and Clank. And now, the most anticipated game of next year is probably Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
And not to say anything against Horizon. Horizon is great. It is one of the prettiest games you'll ever play. It's just when I finish that game, I'm done.
It's funny, man. I feel like Horizon is cursed to forever be the bridesmaid and never the bride. In every regard, it's just an award show. It's like, it's really good, but it's just not better than this. Or it's getting released next to Elden Ring and Zelda. And it's just like, it can never be the best. It's always like, yeah, we're right. We're close, but we're not. It's just interesting.
Is it because it's like very formulaic? Like,
yeah,
it's like open world, like the Ubisoft, the Grand Theft Auto, the open world formula that has been like we've seen it for years and years and years, and of course it is perfected in that game, but it is still that meat and potatoes game, even with its really outworldly premise of a futuristic planet covered in robots.
Futuristic / prehistoric planet.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the idea and the premise is so strong, and that first game especially was great, and all the twists were just phenomenal.
That game led you here, Dick. That game got you to buy a PlayStation.
Yeah, that's true. It was the very first game I played on PS4. But that being said, it's like, man, Spider-Man, the traversal. The fact that they have 2 different voice tracks in that game, that still blows my mind. Yeah. There's a voice track for Spider-Man when he's swinging and when he's standing still. When he's swinging, he sounds like he's swinging and talking, and then when he lands and doesn't move, they switch voice tracks seamlessly like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a normal voice, no wind, no nothing.
And I still don't understand how Insomniac is so good at getting games out quickly. Like these huge games, they're like, yeah, we got Spider-Man, we got Wolverine, we got Ratchet & Clank, we got Miles Morales. Blah.
Yeah.
How do you guys do it? I think your point on Horizon is right, and it's kind of exactly what I was just saying. It's like, as we get further and further into video games as a thing, as a medium, we are, as players, just consistently looking for something refreshing. And I think the perfect example of that is how people feel about Horizon and how people feel about Elden Ring. On paper, they're both open world games, but one of them is doing something new and fresh. You could argue that Breath of the Wild did it, but it's still a new way to do it. And then the other, it's number 78 of 78 open world games that we've played before. It's perfect, but yeah, unless if you get a fucking killer ass story in a game like that, I think Horizon Forbidden West is about as good as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like you said, I could just play a game where I'm swinging around New York as Spider-Man. Like that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
So.
Again, that argument. Are you more excited for next year? Is either Burning Shores or Spider-Man 2? It's not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, even if Burning Shores was a new game, it would still be Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
So. All right, so there it is. I think this is, if you asked me what games are getting to the Final Four, I think these probably would have been my 4 choices. So sorry for a lack of upsets, but it's. I think we made the right choice. We got God of War, Last of Us, Uncharted, and Spider-Man going against each other for the title.
Oh wow! Look at that, Naughty Dog, 2 franchises on there.
Yeah, I mean.
It's like there's someone's number 1 developer in this show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move on. I'm going to take the next 2 things because we got some games to talk about.
Ooh.
And the first one I wanted to bring up is the Forspoken Demo. As we talked about last week, this was announced during the Game Awards and was live during the Game Awards. Both John and I have checked it out. And if you're not familiar with Forspoken, it is a game coming next month, January 24th. It is coming from Luminous Productions and Square Enix. You play as Frey Holland, a young woman who has been transported from New York to the fantasy world of Athia. She uses magical powers to combat enemies. This is a third-person magic combat game. And she's, of course, she's the fish out of water. It's like Evil Dead or any other movies where was it Black Knight?
Black Knight? Green Knight?
Green Knight? Was it Green Knight? No. I'm thinking of the one where, oh boy, I'm so bad with this actor's name. He's in Bad Boys, opposite Will Smith.
Martin Lawrence.
Where's the movie where he's like the knight?
I have no idea.
Oh wow, you know it. Well, there's a movie where he's the exact same thing. He's
I'm
like
not going to say this
water.
just because we're all thinking he is a black guy. It probably is the Black Knight. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So when you get that title, I want to know now.
Big Mama sauce. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, there's a very similar premise. It is an absurd premise. I'm sure we're going to talk about why that is absurd as you play the game.
You expected me to know that movie?
Oh, it is Black Knight.
It is Black Knight, but I've never even heard anything. He's wearing a Jets jersey and has a sword.
I just like the idea that this game is copying the premise of Black Knight. I think that's funny.
All right, fair.
Anyway, yeah, so it is a third-person magic combat game. It is a pretty meaty demo. It kind of gets you into an open world, kind of a giant zone. And they give you some objectives to do after a brief tutorial, and you're free to go and just do whatever you want. Overall, I know John and I are not happy with this game. When it came out, as we mentioned last week, I was in Vegas, and I was looking at Reddit, and one of the big threads over the weekend was how to make Forspoken play better and feel better. And it was like a giant list of all the settings you should change. And yeah, it just seems like a game that's, a month out and just a lot of bad design choices through and through. The first one is, when you play the game, a character is talking to you, like a Mimir-like character. And I was like, who's talking to me? Like, there's no context to who's talking. And he's very snarky. There's a bunch of cheesy dialogue. I remember I picked up a consumable, and he goes, "Consumables?" And she was like, "I'll try not and consume them all." And you just want to roll your eyes. And this is...
While we're talking about it, I got one too. I was laying in bed, right, resting, and then I had to get out of bed, and she goes, "I do not want to get out of bed." And then the disembodied voice goes, "Well, you have to, so there." Okay? Like, what is this dynamic? It's just shitty teenager dynamic?
Yeah.
I don't want a game of that.
Yeah, so... And And it's funny to later learn that there's a menu option to turn it off.
Yeah.
Which is absurd.
I've heard like maybe a workaround for that if you like you want to play the game and you just can't stand it is put in like Japanese or something. Just if you can stand a different language, it might take away a little bit of it. But
right. And then yeah, so that choice is just bad. Like it's just full of bad dialogue. And I know like as we just played God of War and Horizon, which did similar things, the writing was just all of them much better. Right. Well, there was a few times Atreus talking to himself were just as bad, but for overall the games were much better at it. And then one of the worst things this game does is right after the tutorial, the first thing in front of you is a house. And in that house, you can upgrade your gear, you can set challenges for yourself. And this is where you're exposed to the menus of the game. Mm-hmm. And this has one of the worst menus I've seen in a long time. I don't know how these menus got through. They're weird. I think you used the term, fisheye?
Yeah, you go into the main menu, and it's got this, if you know what a fisheye lens is like, right? It's like the middle is kind of bulbous, and it starts to curve on the outsides of it. So, like, you're reading the menus, and the outer edges of them are, like, slanted downwards, and, like, you're kind of turning your neck, and I feel like everybody who's played video games has had a moment where they feel nauseous or have a headache or something. Like sometimes things just hit you. I legit got a headache within 5 seconds of looking at that menu and just... It wasn't a good first impression, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's really weird to just place it right there, like right in front of like all these decisions you have to make, like what kind of challenges you want. It's like I've been in like 3 combat encounters where you had to explain to me how to fight, and now I'm in a place where it's like upgrade your gear and change your gear and do all this stuff, and I'm just like, what?
And like, and that could, you could chalk that down to just like not thinking out the demo fully, but like the main thing I had a problem with that was kind of what you mentioned a little bit with one of the menus is, so you have the ability in this game to kind of through combat upgrade things, right? Very much like God of War Ragnarok, right? If you use this move 75 times, you're going to upgrade it so you can buff it in some way. And this has that. But you can only equip 3 of them at a time, and you can only do that in one of these resting points in a book. So you're telling me that not only can I not just use my abilities willy-nilly and just kind of play with how I want to do it, but I have to basically go to a spot, select what I want, go out, explore, do just probably those 3 things, because why would I use any other ability or attack if I don't have them selected, then come back and do that all over and over and over again? Just seems like a very bad design choice in that regard, at least.
Yeah, and then that gets us to the combat, like the main focus of it. And it kind of, again, it's a magic spell combat. And there's kind of 2 schools at this point in the demo that you can do. There's like a nature, like range combat choice. And then there's a close range fire combat choice. And when you're on one of these, R2 is your magic. You're like attack, like if you're combat, it's like swinging a sword.
I think they said like offensive versus support.
Yeah. So right trigger is offensive. If you hold it down, you do a big spell that you can choose from. If you hit R1, mm-hmm. And then on L2 is your support spells, which you can choose from if holding L1, and it just never feels great. You're using these combat spells, and then if you want to switch, because your support spells have large cooldowns, you can use a support spell, like you can make a big lava pit come out or a ring of fire. Then you have to hold L1 and bring up another menu and then choose one of these other options and then do it all over again. And by the end of the demo, like one of the support wheel had like 8 to 10 spells on it. Like it was huge. And every time it's like, oh, I used the fire pit one. Oh, hold L1. Okay, now I'll go to the spell I want. Okay, no, and now I'm back into combat, and it just never felt great to play.
Right.
Like it kept breaking up the flow because these L2 spells are very powerful and do a lot of damage. And meanwhile, while you're doing all this, you're trying to do this, you're fighting the camera in the game, which is just going all over the place, and just enemies are doing unpredictable moves, so they're like getting behind you, and you're like, oh, where did that enemy go? And another thing with the enemy design that I just thought of in my head is like they're very bland, and then
it's like a deer.
Yeah. It's like
fight this deer.
yeah, and they're just like deer. They have the same color scheme of the environment, so they like blend in really well. Like even like there's like walking undead guys or these winged flying guys, and they all just have this weird color palette that just like blends them into the environment. So there's just like you're just confused and you're going all over the place, and I'm locking onto enemies, then moving on to the next locked on enemy because I can't focus on them any other way.
Right.
I don't know, John. How did you feel about this combat? It's just, I think it's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, and I honestly didn't play a ton of it because I was so turned off by everything else that I played a couple of combos like, nah, I'm not even going to entertain this. So, I thought it just felt clunky. I thought that it was poorly designed, and a lot of this stuff may not be an issue when the full game comes out because they might ease it into you better. But again, like, I think it was very smart for them to put out this demo. I think that, again, I mentioned it before, there's a lot of people on the fence. I don't think it's going to work out for them that they put out this demo, but like I think it was a smart move. But like if you were confident enough to put this out to like try and sway people, like I question this team. That I question the leadership decisions because there's just a lot of things that I feel like if you get even you and I into a boardroom for an afternoon, we could have probably had some good ideas on ways to better the systems or whatever the case. But no, man, and like. We didn't even touch upon. I thought the movement felt a little like sluggish / slippery, which like if you've played any games, you know what I mean when I say that. It's just like you're kind of like pushing a direction, she kind of like slides into that direction, and like, and again, it might all get ironed out when the full game comes out, but like
not a chance.
Yeah,
game's out in a month.
Yeah, I don't. Well, like I just mean like easing into it and like,
I gotcha.
Not just being thrown into the middle of the game, but it just. Didn't do it for me, and it's a shame because I feel like on paper this game I would be all about this game. I love spells and cool abilities, and honestly, like besides just the combat and basic movement, when you hold circle, you do this magic parkour thing where you're just zipping all over the place, jumping over rocks and trees and stuff, and like that part's cool. But everything else just wore on me to the point where I uninstalled this game so fast that I came back to work and Nick's like, did you play it? And I was like, not really. I should probably download this again. And then I did it again and then I deleted it again. So,
yeah,
you know, not for me, but
it reminds me a lot of Anthem. Is like Anthem had they called it a beta, but it was like a demo that came out right before the game came out, and it's the same thing. Just something felt off. Mm-hmm. Like, and same with this. Something just feels off. It doesn't feel good to play. So I fear that this game is going to bomb big time. And that's where I'm going to lead to my next question, John. Review prediction. What do you think Forspoken's going to get?
78.
Ooh.
That's my gut.
Oh, you're going high.
Yeah.
That's going to be 60s for me, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's 67, 68. Again, we'll get into Fantasy League later early next year. Don't pick this game. This is not a safe pick at all.
Nope. So. But if you're listening and you're in that Fantasy League, maybe pick this game.
Yeah. But I don't know. Check it out. Form your own opinion. But it just does not feel great. Wow. And then moving on, as the wheel decreed, I am playing Kena Bridge of Spirits. I touched a little bit on it. This is a debut game from Ember Lab. It was released on September 21st of 2021. It is currently sitting at an 81 on OpenCritic. And so far, just general thoughts is I'm enjoying it. You play as Kena, who's a spirit guide whose job is to guide spirits into the afterlife. It is a third-person action game. It steals everything from God of War. Not that everything God of War did was originally, but a lot of the same design choices are here. The R1 light attack, the R2 heavy attack, the L1 parry, walls that have little symbols on them so you know that, hey, you should climb here. There's a lot of similarities there that when I started playing this right after God of War Ragnarok, I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not the palate cleanser I wanted. More looking around for hidden chests and hidden items in the environment. I was like, oh, man, I don't want to do this. But it does have a difference, and the difference is the rot. So
cute.
The rot are a bunch of controllable little creatures similar to Pikmin or Overlord, in which you can kind of direct them around the environment. They can move things for you. They can turn into this like pure spirit being and clear out some of the decay that's happening in this world.
So you can't say rot, can you?
Yeah, and you can collect and equip adorable hats for them. Like,
what?
yeah, the big mechanic in the game is unlocking their hats,
Nice.
and they're great. They're adorable. They're
This is
funny.
a spoiler I'd be okay with. I gotta look up one of these hats.
They appear in the environment. They'll appear all over the environment in cute positions, and they're always following you around. And then when it comes to combat, when you're doing those R1, R2 heavy attacks, you can, or using your bow in this too, L2 is a bow, you can infuse your attacks with the rot for a super attack. So you can do kind of giant heavy attacks, giant bow attacks, with them infusing your weapons. It's very enjoyable. This is by a former team of animators, so the animation's great, the character designs are great, the environments are beautiful. There's a lot to like here, and there's a lot. The main aspect of the game is John's laughing here because he's looking
He's
at
wearing
a bunch of hats.
pancakes on his head. He's got a stack of pancakes.
Just looking at these hats, that there's something satisfying about a world that's full of gross and covered up and decaying, and then cleaning it up and making it pure, making the water red, the clean and all that. There's just something very satisfying of having an impact on the environments you're in, so that the first time you go through, it's like, oh, this place has seen better times, and then come doing all the side quests, cleaning everything up, and then going, oh wow, it's all nice and clean and naturey.
I did this.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Very early on, one of the stories when I was playing the game is there was this boss fight, and this really turned me off of the game. Is he comes out of 3 different holes, and if you go, and he indicates which hole he's coming out because it glows red. But if you get there too early, he runs back inside, and you can't inflict a second of damage to him. And then he'll just go to another one, and then you have to wait long enough to where he can wind up his attack, try and block or parry his attack, and then go and swing at him. And for some reason, when I swing at him, you do very little damage. But when you use that rod attack, it took off over half of his health, and I was like, oh, okay. So like,
It is one of those moments. I know those moments where you're like, this is the moment I put the game down if this is not fixed in 5 seconds.
Yeah,
And luckily
exactly. And again, you come from God of War Ragnarok, AAA, big budget perfection to, indie title trying to do the same thing. It's like the experience is very different. And then another thing, in God of War, you miss a parry, you block, right? And this, yeah, you do have a block, but the enemies do so much damage to your block that you can, if you miss 2 parries and just hold block, your shield's gone and they'll knock you down. So
Sounds like Dark Souls.
yeah. So the game is very, very heavy on this parry mechanic. And if not, like I said, these enemies fuck you up. Like, they hurt you a lot. Which is why I'm not going to go for the platinum for
Right,
this.
because I've heard this hard mode is like not just a little, it's like extra fucking hard.
Yeah, to get this platinum, you have to beat the game on master difficulty, and that'll just not happen.
Yeah.
But it is very fun. I'm enjoying it so far. Like I said, I was frustrated with its God of War similarities at the beginning, and that boss fight really stuck in my brain. I was pretty upset about that. But as I've been playing more and more of the game, I've been really, really liking it. And if it wasn't for another game coming, I'd probably be still playing it. But I still plan on finishing this. I want to see it through and see where it goes. Even though the story is kind of forgettable, it's just but it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a very good first outing for a team.
Yeah.
And this Ember Labs was, before they were a game developer, they were just an animation studio.
I said that, John.
Actually, oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at pancake hats. The pancake hats were so cute. So they obviously know what they're doing there. I wonder if this is a team that Sony can, look at and be like, maybe this is some niche team we could maybe fit into our portfolio in some way. If they do want to have like a team that can like work with in the more family friendly space, or it seems like they have kind of like a mixture of family friendly and like hardcore combat style things. So I think it's a team to look at. And it won Indie Game of the Year last year, didn't it, at the Game Awards?
That is a good question.
I think it did.
I don't know.
But I'd be curious if Sony continues this relationship, or if this is like maybe just they were looking for Sony to kind of fund their first project and get in the door a little bit, and now they're looking to expand. But it's cool to see that they had success.
Yeah, and to that portfolio thing you mentioned, the only thing I don't like about that idea is that they're doing what Sony does best. It is a
right.
God of War. It's not filling a need. Like Sony needs a good first-person shooter.
Right.
Sony needs unique experiences.
Yeah.
Ember Lab is emulating what they do best. So
Yeah.
I don't think I would want it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It'd be interesting, like them in like a support studio capacity. Like, we can obviously make gorgeous shit. So hey, we'll work with Pixel Opus and handle that side of thing while they work on game design or something.
Yeah.
But hey, that's probably not ever going to happen. But just a thought.
And yeah, it was Indie Game of the Year last year.
It was?
And
I thought so.
In debut Indie Game. That's interesting that Sony's.
So we got that twice in a row.
Yeah, twice.
Just from second party relationships. Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, I wouldn't get debut or either of those, but yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it's a cool game. It has not appeared on any service yet. Like, it hasn't been an essential game. It hasn't been.
Yeah, I feel like that's close.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's close.
I was waiting for it to be in the December list because I had just bought a physical copy of it. So, but yeah, that game's probably coming. So, if it does, definitely check it out. If you like, like I said, God of War Ragnarok, I think this is a nice adjacent game to it.
Speaking of God of War Ragnarok,
yeah,
there it is. Transitions. I finished it, folks. So we're Nick, you ready to talk some Kratos and get into this whole story?
Yep. So big fat spoiler warning. Everything is on the table now. So if you are still in the midst of God of War, stop now and come back later. But yeah, we're gonna spoil every inch of this game now.
So, playing through this game, I got to admit, at the start of it, I was enjoying it, but I was a little let down. Not because it was anything worse than 2018, not because for any reason. I just maybe it was my mental state in the time. I don't know. I fucking love this game. After beating it just kept getting better and better and better, and it really did exceed my expectations. I knew that it was going to be good, but much like The Last of Us Part 2, I don't know how these developers do it, man. How they look at what they've made in the past and be like, we got to exceed that. And Sony Santa Monica did that here. The story is so heartfelt. The moments are so grandiose, and like really took a lot of the feedback, I think, from people's main criticism of the 2018, which is my main criticism as well, which was just enemy variety and that typical God of War grandioseness that we got so used to in the original, and they did that, man, and they did it in spades, and they delivered another banger of a story, made you care. I teared up and cried a couple times. There's a lot of father-son things, which, so if you're a parent, it adds an extra element to it, but what a game, man. I still have not made up my mind on what my game of the year is yet. I have to spend some more time with Elden Ring, I think, but might as well get into it, but I just want to give my 40,000 foot view of this game. It's a 10 out of 10. I think every praise is justified, and this is why I play on PlayStation. This is why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's why we question what game. That's why I'd hope that the game of the year at the Game Awards could have gone to Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Because as we left off, John had just gotten to like where I think the game really picks up and just lays the pedal down. Like it's just nonstop. And from where John's at was the last time we talked about on the show, and then to the end of the game, it's incredible. There's just nothing like it. Like Donkey said in his review, God damn. Fuck. Like this is just an amazing game that, again, dethroned Red Dead in 2018 and could have dethroned Elden Ring, and I don't think anyone could argue. Like, it was neck and neck for both those games. And kudos to Sony Santa Monica. Again, a game made during COVID, a game that had to follow up probably one of the best game on PlayStation 4, and they did it. And we'll get into the details here, but whew.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get my notes to where we left off.
So last time on the show, John had just met Heimdall. He had visited Asgard as Atreus, and he was back as
and then
Kratos.
That nice transition it's coming back to me now.
He was back as Kratos, who, if I remember correct, wants to look into their fate.
Yes, he wants to look into their fate, and he wants to basically figure out where Atreus has gone. And so there's these characters in the Norse mythology that play a very similar role to the Fates that I think a lot of people are used to, and those are called the Norns. And so it's a trio of witches that live, I think they live in this like deep well or something, like the Well of Erd, I believe it's called. And so Freya and Kratos go visit them, and and basically have some of the best, I think, exchanges in the game. I kind of wish these guys were more in the game. The Norns were pretty great. They were, obviously they see the future, so they know everything, right? I feel like they let you know it. Where basically they're like finishing Kratos' thoughts and like, just kind of being really mean to him, but in a funny way, where they're like, oh, you still kill gods, but now you feel bad about it. And they just like kind of really let him have it. But, he finds out that with these people, that Heimdall will kill Atreus and that Ragnarok will begin. That's what they tell him. So at that point, they kind of, I think, like you just said, Nick, know what the track for the rest of the game is, know what needs to be happening. Obviously, it's the title of the game. We all knew it was going to get there. But this is kind of that first moment in the story where like, okay, guys, we're on the path to Ragnarok now. Yeah,
and I just wanted to bring up, it is also cool how you get to the Norns, where you ride Kelpie.
Yeah.
A horse that can just go underwater like a submarine.
A seahorse.
Yeah. And just a cool moment as you ride this thing into their domain and then ride out. And as you mentioned, it is a bummer because they're just very interesting characters.
I feel like a previous Kratos would have killed them.
Yeah, they're not great to have around as things that can foresee the future. But they put Kratos on a path to get a weapon that can defeat Heimdall, because as we mentioned last time we talked about God of War Ragnarok, Heimdall can see people's intentions.
Yeah.
So it makes him a very hard person to fight, as we'll get into. So Kratos sets off to get a weapon.
Yep, and so him and Brock go on a little adventure together. They need to go visit somebody named the Lady, and she's this mermaid, magical creature that has the ability to take this ring called Draupnir, which seems to have like the ability to replicate things, or at least replicate itself. And she's able to craft a spear for Kratos, which I did not see coming. I knew that there'd be a third weapon, and I thought it was going to be a different weapon, but it was, a very. This is probably like the best weapon I've used this year. It's very similar to when you first pick up the Leviathan axe. You're like, oh my god, this just feels great. Where it's this spear that you can just throw infinite amounts of them. You have an ability where you hit triangle and then the spears you've thrown explode. So you can kind of like, poke them in a bunch of enemies, hit triangle, they all pop off at the same time. Or, like one after another in quick succession. It's very satisfying. And like also, I think it's kind of cool that Kratos being a Spartans use spears. It just seems natural. Yeah. So it was a good, I think, choice for a weapon for him.
Yeah, it uses wind abilities, so a lot of it can create like little mini tornadoes. A lot of its abilities have to deal with wind. I love one of the runic attacks where he throws it in the air and like 1 million of them land on the ground, and then you get triangle and all of them explode. It's just very satisfying. It also has the ability to like, one of the runic attacks, like it'll steal the essence of characters, so you'll do whatever they attack with. So if it's like acid or fire or ice or whatever,
Bifrost.
Yeah, Bifrost. Yeah, it steals those attacks. Just an overall cool weapon. And it was the missing piece of the puzzle as far as traversal. Like, you had asked
Finally.
about the holes with the wind spinning out, or these little yellow rocks with yellow markers on them. You can throw the spear in the holes, and then you can use it to platform. And then you can, it's very satisfying, throw it into rocks, hit triangle, and it just spins into the rock like a drill bit and just destroys it. Just, again, it may not be Mimir, but definitely an awesome weapon and something, we didn't see coming. And
the weapon designer / combat team at Sony Santa Monica, man, that might be the most talented team at that studio. I mean, they're all incredible, the narrative team, everything, but just they have a way with making weapons. Just the entire game, I never was like, I'll just use whichever one I'm feeling in the moment. Like, the blades are great, the axe is great, the spear is great. It doesn't matter. Like, and that's why it was kind of nice compared to Forspoken, like, that you could just do whatever abilities you want with any of these weapons, upgrade all them, and it just was kind of like this extra little meta game that I was invested in. So you do that, and then
I do want to touch on one story thing about that moment. Is that this is where
Brock.
we learn about Brock, and that Brock has died before. And
you learned that earlier, but this is like the first time it's.
That it actually is gonna mean something later, as we'll get to.
Yep.
And this is where Sindri lets you know that he only was able to get 3/4 of his soul, which I don't know why that's a thing, but sure, he only got 3/4 of his soul. And then Brock realizes this when he tries to communicate with the lady, and it's like the lady can't even see him because apparently she can see your soul.
Yeah, because the entire time Sindri is like, Brock, you can't go. Don't go. I don't want you to go. Like, I'll go instead. And he's like, no, I've never seen the lady. I got to see the lady. And you're kind of like, what does it matter? So
keep that in mind. As again, if you're listening to this, you probably know. But if you're not planning on playing the game and you're listening anyway, just keep that in mind. That'll come back later.
So we wrap all that up with Kratos, and then we go back to Asgard where Atreus is. And it's at this point that Odin kind of tasks him with finding that last remaining mask piece. And so him and Thrud, Thor's daughter, go on another little adventure to Helheim, where they need to find that piece. And this is where one of my favorite moments of the game happens. Kind of one of the first moments where I could tell that Sony Santa Monica really was trying to recapture that large God of War feeling. You come across this giant wolf dog that's chained up, and Atreus being Atreus, he's an animal lover through and through. Figures, I'll talk to him. Like, we'll figure this out. Let's free him, and he can help us out. Well, the moment Atreus frees him, he fucking just takes off, and he's like, oh no, that's Garm, like, and who's Garm? He tears open rifts and and basically just this horrible thing that he just let loose upon the realms. And so it's kind of during this trip with Thrud that, she gets super pissed off at him because she's trying to prove herself to Odin and to her family. And, Atreus, like, kind of reassured her, like, no, I got this, I'll talk to him. And it just didn't work. And so she gets super pissed. I think
you forget that you also came with Heimdall as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he goes off and does his own thing.
Yeah, Heimdall is also there rubbing your nose in the mistake that you made. Thrud is trying to fight him, and again, he sees intention, so that doesn't go well either. So
right, and so it's like this kind of sets up this moment where, like, okay, Atreus is overwhelmed, he's embarrassed, he feels like he really did fuck up, so he kind of goes to Odin once they come back. And they did get the mask piece, by the way, right?
No,
they didn't.
No,
okay,
that's coming later.
Okay. So they get back to Asgard, and Loki basically tells Odin that, hey man, I want to go home. And you kind of think that, like, well, maybe he's gonna make him stay and all this stuff, and you could tell he was kind of mad about it, but he's like, no, if you gotta go. And so Atreus is able to go back to see Kratos and get reunited with his daddy.
Yep. And in a great moment too, because it was like kind of like, because he's still feeling bad about what he did, and of course when he comes back to Kratos, they're fighting a bunch of undead from Helheim because Garm made a tear there at the tree. Yep. And in a kind of a vulnerable moment, hugs his dad.
Well, and his dad, God, this game has so many just powerful one-liners. He just, it's this moment where Atreus walks through like a cloud of smoke, and the camera's behind Kratos, and he comes in a frame, and Kratos just goes, "What do I call you?" And it's just like, oh man, that's like that's the perfect way to say it, like perfect line in that situation, because he says Loki, he's far from his dad. He says Atreus, he's like, no, Dad, I'm ready to return. And so very, very good line in that moment. But so yeah, it's at this point that Atreus like tells Kratos and everybody what happened. Everybody gives him shit, be like, you fucking let Garm go, you idiot. And so they go off to fight Garm to get it all under control, which this is kind of where like the favorite part of my game really comes into play, because you have to fight Garm, which in and of itself is a great boss fight. It's one of those long boss fights where you think you beat them.
Yeah.
Where Kratos does, I think, this crazy thing where he basically wraps his head, or like with a giant chain, pulls on it. It looks like you break his neck. Doesn't kill him. You start walking away. Garm comes back. You see him through this awesome shot where you're like kind of in a tunnel and his like head is poking through. Mm-hmm. And you keep battling Garm, but you don't kill Garm, Nick. What happens to Garm?
Atreus asks you to trust him, and then this is kind of a great moment because Kratos, eventually just is like, yeah, let's do what you want to do. Let's do your plan. And of course, through a bunch of little quick time events, you get Atreus on top of Garm, in which he plunges the dagger into Garm and transfers the soul of Fenrir, which we mentioned in the very first time we talked about this game, that had to mean something. Mm-hmm, when Fenrir died at the beginning of the game, that we saw his soul kind of leave his body, and apparently Atreus unknowingly transferred it to his dagger and now put the soul, just like he did with the snake earlier in the game, he puts Fenrir's soul into Garm in an attempt to pacify Garm. And he does.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he does. Garm's evil eyes turn into these big brown soft eyes. It is great.
Starts panting like a good boy would. Brings his head down close. You start scratching his muzzle. It's so good.
Yeah. Just a great moment of just. Again, we're dog lovers here, so a giant Clifford size. Yep. Dog is.
Yeah, Clifford is the easiest way to put it, for sure.
It's just amazing. I think Kratos tells him to go home, and of course he rips a tear in the wall and just goes home.
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
But and then that adds into a plot point. Okay, now we have a quick way. That will be a factor later in the game.
Right.
To quick escapes, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So.
But so after you get that situation under control, it's time to deal with Heimdall, right? And so. Freyr was captured by some Aesir forces and abducted, and so Freya wants to obviously go figure out what's going on with her brother. So she takes off and does that. Meanwhile, you are going to fight Heimdall. And Kratos is trying so hard at this point to not go back to his old ways, to be better, as he likes to say quite often.
Yeah.
And Heimdall is just the biggest shit. He eggs, and he knows that's the interesting dynamic with him as a character. He knows everything, like, what Kratos is thinking, what his intentions are, everything like that. And so he probably knows that, like, I'm just going to fucking get under this guy's skin. And you get to this point where I believe before you fight, right, you get to that point where he pins Heimdall down.
No, well, you fight. He's on the mount first, and then you get him down. You knock him off the mount. You kill the mount, and then you fight him one-on-one, and then you pin him with a spear in his arm against the wall.
And basically, this is at this point that Kratos is like, "All right, I'm gonna be better.
Yeah.
Don't fucking come near my son again.
Yes.
And I will let you go." And in Heimdall, I don't remember exactly what he says. Something really shitty. To the point where, remember how I said that spear, Nick, you can hit triangle and it explodes?
Yeah.
He slams the spear down and his arm just explodes off. Just fucking bloody explosions. I think there's like blood on his face. Awesome visceral moment. And Kratos is like, I fucking told you. This is it. And, Heimdall being a god just regrows his arm back.
Yeah, I think he gets mad because you're like feeling sorry for him.
Yeah, he's like, him or something.
Yeah, he's like, you pity me, and then he gets angry and uses like his arm just turns his arm that's gone now turns into like pure Bifrost.
Yeah.
It's like pure magic.
Yep. And then the real fight, goes on with Heimdall. But as you can expect, Kratos is a being of vengeance, and that's just the curse that he was dealt. So you get another very God of War moment, much like I believe the Apollo fight in God of War 3, where you just have a pretty brutal killing. You choke out a very blood-soaked Heimdall while Mimir is staring you in the eyes as his head is just on the floor next to you, and you just choke him out until his...
And he's telling you not to do it.
Yeah, telling you not to do it, but I'm sure Kratos in that moment, rage took over, he's thinking of his son, all these other emotions, and he just chokes him out until Heimdall's dumb eyes go dull. And that was kind of like a big, I think Kratos moment where he's like, all right, I know I don't want to do this, but sometimes you just have to. And that is, one of the themes of the whole game.
Yeah.
But, so I believe now Atreus has the mask, right? Because they go back to, I don't know where he gets the rest of the mask, but they go back to Sindri's house now.
Well, so you get the boat fight where you're flying on the boat.
Oh, right.
And then they're kind of out of ideas at this point. And then Atreus pitches the idea to go back to Asgard to finish the mask, to get it to finish it. So you go there. You have to get Thor out of a bar with Thrud. Thor again has issues as a common theme here. Not only is his dad Odin shitty to him, but also Kratos killed his kids in the last game. So Thor's a big old drunk. Thrud doesn't like it. It's a fun little bar fight scene where you're kind of like running around and avoiding things. You have the sword again. Ingrid and Mimir are fighting in the air one-on-one by themselves while you're fighting all these guys. And then, you go to Niflheim to get the final piece of the mask. And this is when you do so, this is when you are confronted. Sif tells Odin...
Not Sift.
Sif. Sif. S-I-F. Confronts Odin and you, Atreus, the player, about killing Heimdall and that this is no good. And this is where you go back to the house, finally. Because I guess we didn't mention, Sindri gives you like a get out of jail card. Like, when you're in trouble, throw this on the ground, say this word, you go back to the house. So Atreus, in that moment, takes the mask, uses it, and now you are back at the house.
Sorry, and I also want to mention, because I'm reading my notes, you come across a giant crow, and that's amazing. Like, I love giant creatures in this game, and so you come across a world serpent style crow. I believe his name's Hrace Velgar. Super cool. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Again, I love just a sense of scale in things.
Yeah.
So you get back to Sindri's house, and probably the biggest twist in the entire game happens here. And so you're kind of going over what we need to do, what the plan is. And Tyr, who has been avoiding combat and fighting the entire fucking game, all of a sudden is kind of like, oh, we got the mask pieces. This is my purpose. My purpose is to lead the army. Kind of what Atreus has been trying to tell him. Be like, we have your picture here. Like, you lead the army. He's like, okay, here's my purpose. And all of a sudden is like, I'm all about this. Let's go back to Asgard. I'll do this. And the only person in the room who's like, this doesn't, like, what do you mean, was Brock. Brock just kind of called him real quick. And, like, at first it was really well done, because at first I thought Brock was just being, he's an abrasive person. Yeah. He uses bad language, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. So I thought he was just kind of being silly and just being Brock. But he kept going on with it, and to the point where Tyr is kind of walking away from him and just turns around and stabs him.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why did you do that? Is Tyr a bad person? Well, come to find out, apparently this entire time, from the moment you rescue Tyr in the dungeon, has been Odin.
Yeah. He
has been shapeshifted to look like Tyr, to basically be an enemy behind enemy lines, and hiding in plain sight the entire time. Which, obviously it was a big fucking moment. We see a main character, maybe not a main character, but a big character who's been a part of this whole journey with us, die. and know full well that we have to, kill Odin now. Like, that's what we have to fucking do. He's a piece of shit. We need to get Ragnarok going because we know that Ragnarok, the whole prophecy is that, we can basically eliminate Asgard and save the rest of the realm. So, it's definitely their entire motivation and everything right now to do that. But yeah, Odin tries to escape with the mask. He actually doesn't leave with the mask. He leaves it behind. And Brock unfortunately dies in Sindri's arms. And now they need to basically start recruiting, because they need an army, right? They can't just walk into Asgard with the 7 of them and be like, we got this, guys, even though Kratos would probably somehow win.
Yeah.
So they send kind of everybody off to go recruit some
One thing
soldiers.
I do want to mention, though, is Sindri.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is a mess at this point. Like visibly a mess. And I forget what is one of the best fucks in the game. But I forget what he exactly says.
I feel like I can get this. Hold on.
Because you go and visit him to check on him to see how he's doing before you make this decision to raise an army. And he is a fucking mess. Like the funny Sindri, the clips that we've played on this show that you've heard where cobblestones have mouths would be disgusting. That fun Sindri is no fun anymore, and he's super upset, super serious, and he's just, man, he's something.
Atreus goes back to apologize and just kind of try to be a human about it. And I only wrote down this part, but yeah, Sindri basically says to him, "Get the fuck out of my sight," which is like, oh man, I wish I read a lot of my notes. I forgot about a lot of like Thor going full psycho on Atreus, all this stuff. I know you mentioned a little bit, but
yeah.
All right, so get the fuck out of my sight. And so you're like, okay, Sindri just is out. He is so like I thought at this point I'd be like, am I not going to be able to upgrade my weapons for the rest of the game? Because like Brock's dead, he doesn't give a fuck. But like luckily their little friend helps out.
Lunda. Yeah.
But yeah, one little thing about that too that I did find kind of funny was, right after Odin stabs Brock, Atreus is like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go away. I have to go hunting. And you literally like leave everybody. You're like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is too hard. And you go to Midgard for it felt like 40 seconds. You're like, I have to hunt. And like, okay. And you go hunt and they're like, nah, I have to go back to my friends. Okay. Just thought it was
a weird pacing and probably one of the very few little stumbles.
Yeah, you're just like, what? This could have been just eliminated entirely.
Yeah. It could have been written a lot better. But yeah, then this gets us into the big raise an army. Hopefully all these armies show up when we go to fight in Asgard. Freya gets the Valkyries. We see Sigrun, our old friend from God of War 2018. That was a pain in the fucking ass to beat. Mm-hmm. She is on your side with the Valkyries. Sindri goes to recruit the dwarves. Freyr gets the elves from Alfheim,
which is a little bit of. I mean, I like that they explain that later, but this is a species that's been at war with one another for like 200 years. Like, hey, we need you to fight Odin. All right.
Yeah.
They kind of explain it later, like that Freyr was like the very first outsider to come to Alfheim, and so they kind of view him as this.
I think you get more context if you've done all the Alfheim side quests.
That probably true.
There's a lot more of how important Freyr was to Alfheim.
Yeah.
So you're you meet at Tyr's temple, the portal to all the realms in the first game, and Kratos gives a great speech. I think this is where he goes back on his famous line that we also featured on this podcast about close your heart. I forget the exact line. Close your heart
to their suffering. Close your heart to their pain. Close your heart to their suffering.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's this moment that he says it, because I know it was because he had that extra dream with Faye.
Yes.
And basically that's kind of where he says it to her. She says it to him. Sorry. And spins it back around to Atreus.
Yeah,
I always love that. I love recalling quotes and like twisting, because there's a moment too earlier where like I think Kratos was really down and Atreus kind of had to pick him up, and he said, "Don't worry, father. Don't be sorry. Be better." Like it just is like chippy, like, hey, it's gonna be okay. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And there was another one where he confessed to Atreus because they didn't want to kill Heimdall, but Kratos did, and he had to show it to Atreus. He had to come clean, obviously. And I forget what we looked it up and I forget it, but it was not because it was fate, because it was necessary or along those lines.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the Brock line? I'm sorry.
No, the Atreus line to Kratos when he shows him the Horn of Galahorn.
Yeah, I don't remember that. You're right, though, on the faith thing. It was because the dream happened right before, and she said, the culmination of love is grief. We open our hearts to it, which I think is actually a pretty powerful line. That's really good. Yes. So we open our hearts to it. Kratos said, close your heart to their suffering and grief in the first game. So, when I heard that, I was like, oh, he's going to say it again, and he did. But yeah. So yeah, you have that general speech. The music is so good. And then right after that speech, right, is when you storm into Asgard.
Yes.
Right, and so the music's playing, shit's exploding. Literally, the snake that you instilled with the spirit earlier that was growing at a huge rate. He's fucking fighting Thor. Thor's flying around fighting that guy. The God of War theme is playing in the background, kind of slowly, like it never has in the game before, and you're just running through. Obviously, your blood's pumping. Oh, we missed the Surtur part. We didn't talk about Surtur.
Oh yeah.
Didn't talk about Surtur. Got to talk about Surtur. Sorry, put a pin in that, guys. So. Surtur, for those who have seen Thor Ragnarok, you know that he's kind of like the linchpin for Ragnarok. He's the one that he triggers it. So they have to go to Surtur and get. I know. Sorry.
I can't believe we forgot this.
Yeah, part. I know. We knew that. We knew this would happen. Where they go to Muspelheim and go get Surtur and basically get him to help them. And so it's a really cool scene, like everything else is in this game, where they walk up to him. He's like a blacksmith. Kind of not what I was expecting, but he's like, "Hey, Surtur, we need your help," and he just goes, "No," and just flicks his finger, and they go flying across the map, and to this point, we're like, "Oh my god, how powerful is this guy?" And you have to fight a frost thing or one of those relic beast things or whatever. You beat that, and you go back and basically dude, we need your help. He's like, "No, I don't want to help you." Like, why not? I just don't want to. Okay, and you find out that he has this relationship with. His lover, I don't know what you would kind of call their relationship, but he's like, no, I don't want to do that because if I do that, she dies.
Yeah.
And so you have to convince him, and I don't really remember what.
You don't really have to get too much into the details. You convince him to help him.
Yeah.
He has a way to help you that doesn't involve sacrificing his wife. But what it leads to is probably one of the most satisfying boss fights in the game, where you and Atreus have to fight two Valkyries. You saw them earlier in the game in Asgard. You and Atreus fight them together, and it's a typical Valkyrie fight, as in the 2018 games. But what it ends on is probably one of the coolest moments in the whole game. Where you get their health down, and of course they're beating you up. They're beating you. They got Atreus down, they got you down, and then this is where you go into Spartan rage. But not only do you go into Spartan rage, Atreus goes into fucking bear mode, and it's just a cool moment. It's one of those God of War fucking moments where it's like, fuck you, fuck this boss, fuck both of you. I'm going to watch Atreus and Kratos just tear you apart. And it is probably one of the most satisfying moments in the game of them fighting together at full steam in sequence, just kicking their ass, and just again ends in a cool shot of Kratos and Atreus as a bear. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's if you were to take a screenshot of any moment in the game, it would be high on the list of one of those cool moments.
Oh, it's a trophy, so you have the screenshot.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, so now we can get back to again another God of War. This reminds me of the beginning of God of War 3, just on the scale of all this stuff's happening in the background. It's almost too much. Fenrir's there with Angerboda. They're fighting.
He bites a dragon and throws the dragon with his mouth. Surtur is massive in the background, just lurking like a big giant, I don't know, bringer of doom. I don't know how else you would say that. Yeah, and it's just, it really felt like the culmination of this, long story arc that we've been on for 80 hours now.
Yeah.
But, you kind of get to the end of this charging of Asgard, and the fight that we all knew was going to come, we all knew it was going to have to happen again at some point. as you fight Thor for the second time.
There's one thing I want to say before we get that, and that is
a lot, folks. Nick's better at this than I am.
Because it's gonna come up later.
Yeah.
Is that Sindri arrives without the dwarves?
Oh, yeah.
And Sindri again is still being a huge piece of shit. He doesn't want anyone else dying because of Atreus and Kratos, so he just comes by as lonesome and just again is a shitty person.
Well, because Odin has these like big like ballistas, right, that are like shooting like huge arrows at the gates, because I think they figure if they can close the gates, they can stop these armies from coming. And so Kratos is like, we need to get them offline or whatever, and then Sindri just shows up and like hits a hammer and they explode. He's like, all right, I'll do this for you, but then I'm fucking peacing out. Hits the hammer, they all explode, so that Crisis was saved. So he really didn't need to bring the dwarfs, but yeah, that was it. And he just pieced out again, right?
Yeah. He destroys the wall, and then you're able to get in, and then that leads to the Thor fight again.
Yeah.
So,
which I mean, I don't know if I have much to say about it.
No, it's
except
kind of a
for
repeat.
how it ends.
Yeah, go ahead. It's a repeat of the fight earlier in the game. There's nothing really great about it.
Yeah, so it's another fight. Thor is like basically just belittling you while you fight him, and eventually, as you would expect, Kratos comes out on top. But he really wants to demonstrate that he is not the god killer that he once was. He's going to let him go, to demonstrate he's not the ruthless god that he was. And Odin arrives. He's like, oh, hey, Dad, what's up? Did you come to help me? And Odin fucking stabs Thor in the stomach with a spear and kills him, which I did not see coming. I kind of thought going into this fight that you would get through the second Thor fight, something like that would have happened where I'm not going to kill you, and then they sort of team up together against Odin, because Thor, throughout the whole game, just wants his dad's approval. His dad's a bag of dicks to him. Just all this thing. So I thought there would be a little.
There were a lot of
like
seeds
that.
of doubt planted throughout the story with Thor.
But yeah, so he kills Thor out of anger, and then it's at that moment that Atreus takes the mask that Odin wants so desperately, and he breaks it. Which then gets pulled into a realm tear and forever closes.
Are you bummed that we don't know anything about what the mask was?
Yes.
or what was in the tear?
Yeah, there's a few small pieces of story that I thought could have gotten fleshed out a little bit better. That being one of them. That's a big thing that we just really didn't learn much about at all. And then the other one is like, when you first see that very first. When you're with Angerboda and you go into the shrine and you see that first prediction where like Kratos is like dead, he's like in Atreus' arms. I thought there has to be a moment in that game that happens, that he might not be dead, but he's being held in it.
It'll be recreated.
I was kind of surprised to not see that either.
Yeah.
But again, minor things, right?
Yeah.
Minor things. So yeah, I mean, so at this point, we got to take on the big bad, right? We gotta beat Odin, and so Freya, Atreus, and Kratos all take on Odin. Again, I don't, that might be a small thing with the game that I thought maybe could have been a little bit better. As you'd think the final fight would be a little more memorable. But at the same time, unless if Odin transforms into a gigantic version of himself or something, like what can you really do?
Gets Rita repulsed.
Yeah, exactly. So they kind of defeat him, but not in the way you'd expect, right? They kind of. What's the power we know Atreus can do? He can transfer souls into these, basically transfer souls. And from earlier in the game, Angerboda shows Atreus these little balls that can capture souls, right?
Yeah.
And so I think kind of in theme of like, we must be better. We can't be, killers like we were in the past. Atreus decides that he's going to get Odin's soul into this little ball and keep it there. And you're like, okay, well, that's kind of satisfying. It's a neat, cool way to do it. Our boy Sindri wasn't about to have it.
Well, he gives it to Kratos, who then gives it to Freya to make the choice. Like, Freya obviously does not like Odin at all either, and Freya turns it down too to kill it. And then, as you mentioned,
Sindri shows up, grabs it, puts it on a table, smashes it with a hammer.
Yeah,
like not even have any doubt. It was like, no, this is what's happening. I need my revenge.
Yep.
And then he still fucked off. I think even after that, he's like, nah, all right, I'm still gonna go be mopey, but that's fine. And then so obviously we got to escape Asgard now.
Yeah, because Surtur's gonna destroy it.
Yeah, Surtur's about to explode everything, and so you kind of have this little scramble to get out, and Nick, I'll kind of probably let you take the ending of this, because you better explain it.
Yep, Fenrir gets you out. Remember, as we mentioned, he can tear through realms, so he just creates a portal and they leave. Freyr does die at this moment. He sacrifices himself to save you. I think it's not a big deal, really. That didn't hit it very hard for me. I was just like, all right, he's gone. You wake up as Atreus. You have this nice little moment where you kind of walk around and see all the characters and check on them. Sif and Thrud are okay. Freyr's little ragtag band of characters is okay. And then you go, Freya's okay. And then you go see Kratos. And I forget what they say to each other. I don't think, this is not the memorable part, because Angerboda shows up and she's like, I got something to show you.
Yeah.
And this is where they take you to the top of the mountain in Midgard, and she has like one last mural to show you. I don't remember what is on the mural.
Yeah, so I'm reading it.
Oh yeah, it was had to do with Faye.
Yeah, so it says, this painting reveals that Faye destroyed the mural in Jotunheim so that Kratos and Atreus would not know the fate the giants wanted for them. In doing so, she enabled them to choose their own destiny. Then Atreus tells Kratos that he must go on a journey alone, blah blah, find the other giants.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically they find out that they were to make their own destiny, and at this moment. Was one of the hardest hitting moments for me. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a dad. So, we all as parents have to grapple with the idea of our kids, going off on their own one day, which I'll tell you, I got a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, 2 1-year-old girls. It's terrifying. I can't even imagine, but it happens. And so Atreus needs to go on this journey. He needs to prove it to himself, to his dad, to everybody. And Kratos says, finally, after just sheltering him and not caring about anything but keeping Atreus safe, he says, Loki can go, Atreus stays here, and he kind of pats his heart. And that's just such again, that's the perfect thing you can say in that situation. Where you can just feel the love between the two of them. Yeah. And and I think that's what separates this reboot of God of War, the God of War franchise, from the 2018 version to this one. It really, just this emotional transformation of Kratos is just almost unimaginable. If you were to tell me before that game came out, where it could go, and to do it so beautifully and flawlessly.
It's funny that you say that, because to continue this scene, after Atreus leaves, Kratos sees the other side of the mural, and it's on this side of the mural that Kratos sees a fate where he's kind of like a big statue and people are worshiping him. And I think he says, I didn't even think this was possible. Yeah,
Kratos finally gets the happy ending he deserves, and the peace that he's been looking for since, for fans of the series, since the very first opening of the first game, right?
Yeah.
He's standing on the towers of wherever, or the cliffs, and he's like, the gods have forsaken me, and he jumps to his death because he's done with it.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about living. He's just tired of the bullshit of life, and to see that journey kind of come to an end where he just did what he needed to do to find peace and be happy is awesome.
Yeah.
That's the end of a 17-year journey for me, at least. I've played all the mainline ones, and yeah,
Christopher Judge kills it, as he won last week, well deservingly. All these scenes, and I know we kind of and this is going really long, but I know we cut out a lot, but seeing the journey of their relationship between Atreus and Kratos, between Kratos being the overprotective dad to learning to trust him, and Atreus doubting his dad's plan for the future of Ragnarok and all this stuff, and then Atreus trusting his dad's choices and learning and growing, and this all happening in this epic story. It's just amazing. It's unbelievable. I mean, gosh.
Yeah. I not giving this game of the year. It's such a weird thing to even think about, but it truly is so special, and Yeah, man. I both think it's the right decision, and I'm heartbroken that this is the end we'll see of at least the Norse saga. Like I think it was the right decision, you know. So yeah.
Well, again, we kind of have some theories, and
Yep.
a lot of theories involve the plots that are still left open. Sindri being a piece of shit,
Yep.
and as we just talked about the mask, so that just made me think of it too, and Atreus going on his own. Atreus was a playable character in this game, and we kind of got this half sequel in Spider-Man Miles Morales. Do we see a half sequel, God of War 2.5, that stars Atreus and covers him finding the giants? Maybe we learn more about the mask. Maybe we get that resolution with Sindri.
Yeah, we you know, when we talked about it the other day, I think it makes a ton of sense, and I think that it is very likely. You know, this is Sony's. You know, famously, Sean Layden, the person in charge before Jim Ryan, said that games are just becoming too expensive to make. They take too long to make, and so I think at that moment is when we saw this Sony initiative to make these smaller experiences, 8-hour experiences, but with the same polish that you get from these huge games. And so, yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, they already have the groundwork for Atreus. Like, why not develop a story that makes sense? I will say, though, I think my gut tells me it won't happen. I don't know why. I don't have any answer for you there. I feel like they want the Santa Monica team to move forward in bigger ways. Not that this wouldn't be huge if they made it, but, you know, Cory Barlog has already been kind of like a little out in the open with, like, he's making some sort of space game, right? So that seems to be, it's never been confirmed or anything, but
right.
It seems to be the direction they want to go. And I think because I think the question that has to be answered is, you know, if you're Jim Ryan, what do you do with this franchise? Do we take a break and do we go into, you know, take a break and come back in 10 years where, okay, Kratos is in Egypt or a different mythology, or do we just start working on something from now, because games take 5 to 6 years to make, and have another thing there, because, you know, as we've discussed on the show, this is the fastest selling Sony exclusive ever. It makes them money. Businesses are here to make money. So if they're in the making money game, which they are, like, you know, you'd think you'd want to move forward with that. But
And one more thing on top of that is, we are not going to talk about it here, but Amazon is making a God of War television show.
Yep.
So God of War is here to stay for a little bit in the mindset.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
A game tie-in would I mean, that cross promotion, that cross synergy, we could very well see.
Yeah.
So,
which I'm not happy about this initiative, but, you know, again, we'll save that for a different show.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, because, you know, it would make sense. It would pair up nicely, but then, like, you know, Sony's every fucking property they own is getting some sort of cross media right now, and so do we just live in a land where they are just rinsing and recycling the same things because we need to feed in the TV shows, which feed into the games, which feed into the movies, which feed into the games?
Well, it's a little different. Like, this is not God of War 3. This is, you know, God of War 2 of the new trilogy.
Yeah.
So I think, like, we're not burnt out on these experiences.
No. I guess all I'm saying is I'm down for more games. I don't want really the show, but again, different time for a different episode. But
okay.
If you were Jim Ryan, Nick, what would you do with God of War right now?
I would probably do what I'm saying, the God of War
make the Atreus
2.5, you know, a 10 to 15 hour experience.
Do you just then staff up Santa Monica to have the right amount of people to have a B team kind of do that?
I think they're already doing that. I think that, as you mentioned, game development's taking too long. Sony has expertly navigated having multiple releases a year, and I think they do that with multiple teams. We see that with Insomniac releasing 2 different games 6 months from each other, between Miles Morales and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I think Guerrilla Games, all of them are going to start doing this more. So, yeah. But we'll see. 2 quick questions. Favorite boss fight?
Garm.
Yeah, Garm. Okay.
I mean, it's between Garm and I can Grilla. I can never remember. You know, that giant, right?
Yeah.
You know, pot fight lady. That was just cool and weird and different. But I think Garm, just with the whole length of the fight, the unexpected I killed him, I didn't kill him thing, and then putting the Spirit of Fenrir into him. It's just that it didn't take that one.
Yeah, that wolf whipping those giant chains at you.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Yep. I would also honorable mention the Nidhogg is also a good.
Nidhogg was dope.
Yeah.
It's a good call.
All right, and then I know you probably haven't done all of them, but what was your favorite side quest?
So far, it's probably freeing the jellyfish.
Okay.
You know, I really, really like those guys.
What are the Haffle? What are they called?
I got the note. But yeah, I think it's Elfheim, right?
Yeah, it's an Alfheim.
It's
yeah.
Elfheim. You're in the desert. You know, again, as I mentioned, I love giant creatures, and so you have these humongous jellyfish that are like trapped underground, and like they're like in these chains, and you gotta go free them. But then you find out that they have a partner, and like they have to mate, which is just weird. But to allow their offspring to thrive or whatever the case. So yeah, you have to free 2 of these things. Once you do, they shoot up into the sky and start kind of like flying around, and you free the other one, they start dancing. I guess it's intercourse for giant jellyfish, but they start doing this cool dancing thing, and it's just the sense of scale and all that stuff. But shout out to honorable mention to the giant whale one as well.
Yeah, so yeah, that is my favorite one, and that is freeing the lift bark. It is what I mentioned in our first time we talked about it. It is the quest I wanted you to do so bad, and you took so long to do it. I was so, because like I said, like I do like the quest you're mentioning, but this quest was cool in multiple ways. One is it changed the environment drastically, because once this whale comes up, he unlocks all these other platforms, and you're jumping all over him, freeing him from its chains. It's just a very cool moment, and then it's also a very good story moment, like one of the best side stories to the game, where Mimir, who was responsible for capturing this whale, has to come to terms with what he did, and that there's no easy fix to it. It is by far some of the best writing in the game, and definitely, my personal opinion, the best side quest.
Half goofas, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Half goofas.
Yeah. So. And then just one more thing.
Sure, yeah, can't stop.
Let's keep this podcast going for hours. What do you think of the Valkyrie equivalent, the Berserkers?
So it's hard. I guess I have to admit something right now, Nick. I don't want to, but I have been playing this game on the easiest difficulty since I beat the game, right? Since I beat the campaign. So every time I fight these guys, they're simple. Right. But like they also all look the same. Like they all are this. Like I don't get a lot of variety with them. I think it would have been cool maybe if like changed their sizes a little bit or something.
You haven't done all of them yet, right?
No.
So
I have 9 of 12.
Okay, so there are ones with like multiple Berserkers at once, but yeah, I'm with you. They're not as cool as the Valkyries were by any means.
No, I feel like they could have done a better job probably reaching into some weird mythos or some weird creature. Everybody likes to fight creatures over humanoids, right? Like that's just, and so like even though Valkyries are humanoid, they have big fucking wings and all this other stuff. These are just guys that with armor and hammers or armors and swords, and they have some annoying mechanic to it. But yeah, it's hard to say because like even like every single fight I've come across, and like I feel kind of bad about it, but at the same time I don't want to. I want to get through this because again I have so much to play. Been playing it on just the easiest difficulty. Just
don't feel bad. I don't think you're taking away from your experience.
I can hear Mark's frustration right now and disappointment.
Yeah. But that's kind of it. I think that's unless you got more to say.
Anyway, I got 17 more things to say. No, I think that's it.
What a game! What a way to cap off the year.
Yeah. Again, I mean, this is why we are PlayStation fans.
Yep.
And as we mentioned last week, and Microsoft not having dick anywhere, just feel like I made the right choice.
Yeah.
But
all right, so. Song, John.
I don't remember.
Oh, John, you're great. Yeah. So last week, John got his announcement of the Game Awards, a game he never thought was going to be get a sequel to. One of his favorite games of all time. Hades 2 is coming. So, as you heard before this show, the Hades clip, and we're going to end on a Hades song.
God of the Dead.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you know who did it?
Darren Cord.
There you go.
Yeah, this is a 9-minute song, so strap in, folks. It's just gonna make our podcast longer, but make sure you at least stick around to like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. That's when it really, really picks up. lots of heavy riffs, and it's kind of like Doom music in a way. But
Hades
awesome
is a
stuff.
perfect game, and it has a perfect soundtrack. So great thing to end on. And so we get to our teases for next week. John and I are playing a game, and it is fucking awesome so far. And that game is Neon White. John got it as part of winning the Fantasy League. I had to make sure he got it.
Yep.
I've been playing it. We will definitely have thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Possible game of the year. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see if it can keep the pace up that it's doing right now, and somehow get better. I don't know. It's another. I think I'm using the word perfect game too loosely lately, but it does what it set out to do very, very well.
Yeah, it is pretty fantastic so far. We're very early on, but other than that, we will announce our Game of the Year categories next week, so you can participate and know what's coming. And
please remember, if you email us your recaps or your wrap-ups. We'd love to go through some of that stuff.
so it'll probably be a lot of games next week. I definitely want to hear some more Elden Ring.
Yeah, I mean, I weirdly beat Gone Home also.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it took me an hour and a half. I don't know. Okay. It's an old game, so I don't have much to say. But
we'll have some more games, and then episode 29 will be Game of the Year, and we will do all of the 2022 recaps then. So, all right, thanks for listening to this extra long podcast. We appreciate all of you, and we will be back next week with 6 more things. Bye, guys.
Mwah.